space exploration enabling technologies, which includes, again, habitat modules and the planetary spacesuits. I've been part of the Space Generation Advisory Council. It's a volunteer-based, student and young professional organization, and they conducted a simulation study last year in Poland, which was called Poland Mars Analog Mission. I've been associated with Mars Society, basically doing the remote mission control rotation, supporting the crew who are currently in HAB, technology research for NASA in different analog missions. Uh, from crew perspective, it was kind of like monotonous, and some of the questions didn't make any sense at all. But they have different parameters based on which they study how the crew is, the interpersonal relationship and how the crew is feeling like. This is the inside of the pressurized module. It was basically a shipping container, and they used like they pressurized with a tarp around it, so it's sort of like a low fidelity environment, but basically it gives you a little bit feel about isolation since you can't see anything outside or you can't feel anything from outside. They had security systems. On the right hand side, they talk about issues and having time to talk about different aspects is it's a nice addition. Again, because there was not a lot of tasks given to us, so we had to entertain ourselves, basically just remain sane. We did some cooking adventures. We had movie nights. The picture on the bottom right side is basically a hatch. It connects the habitat to the rover, but it wasn't used for this particular mission because the whole purpose was to stay inside. The lessons that were learned from this study was, when you're living in a confined space with no natural sunlight and nothing much to do, it can get pretty challenging. It might sound like, or it might look like it's a picnic, but when you don't have anything to do, you don't have any activities to engage in, it's pretty boring. Also, the plants, again, just having plants to look at or having to care for them, it was a nice thing. The other biggest thing that I took out of this mission was, when you go in as an astronaut, you have a lot of responsibility. You want to make sure that your mission is a success. And even if there are some, interpersonal issues, sometimes you might tend to not bring them up because you're conflicted whether the mission is important or whether, the crew cohesion is important. So even when we had, issues, we talked about it. But towards the end of the mission, after the mission debriefing, there were issues found that were not talked about, and the mission was given preference. So in a long duration, mission, that could be a real challenge and a real problem, having people fighting each other. I extensively studied how having no sunlight is going to affect the crew's health. We found towards the end of the mission, we were going to sleep at like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Even though we weren't physically tired, we didn't have much to do, but just, the lack of natural sunlight, it kind of like made a shift in our sleeping patterns, and that was interesting to note. Again, because of no EVAs, there wasn't a lot of exertion that could, put us to sleep, or there wasn't a lot of exercise, and it was pretty boring mission. Psychological studies, the pattern they use to, the study your psychology, is pretty mundane and it's pretty monotonous. Like every night you basically answering the same questions. So at some point you tend to, repeat your previous answers. You're not really putting much thought into it. You kind of become like robotic with the whole process. And I thought it wasn't very uh, creative approach if you really want to study somebody's psychology. Also, the gender ratio. In this mission, we had 3 girls, and I thought it would be interesting to know how having one or more two male presence is going to affect those results. The second mission that I was part of is the Poland Mars Analog mission. This mission is quite special because it took a year and a half uh, in preparation alone, because it was such an international mission. There were people from 30 plus countries around the globe working remotely and in presence. And just to bring this project to life it was such a enjoyable, pleasure, and memorable experience for me. We had people from 6 continents, and there were students, there were space professionals, there were young professionals working in different industries, and they brought in a lot of experience, they brought in a lot of insight into making this happen. Also, the total duration of this mission was just 2 weeks, but the preparation alone took a long time. There was a lot of emphasis on human factor studies and the psychology dynamics. This was the first mission that I was part of, which actually took the time delay into consideration, like very seriously. There was 15-hour delay of before you send the message and they're seeing it and they send it back to you. So there was a lot of waiting around and figuring out what to do till you receive the next message. I thought it was pretty challenging, especially if there are like emergency situations. So we considered how important it is to have crew autonomy rather than depending on Earth-based controllers. So any planetary surface, I know with Apollo missions we collect a lot of moon rocks. So geology goes hand in hand with like all these analog missions. Anybody who's going to go to these planets, they gotta know how to do geological work. We gotta understand. So that aspect was also taken into this mission. We simulated a lot of EVA emergencies. Again, the autonomy versus practice simulations. So when is it okay for the crew to act autonomously versus you get commands from the mission control? We had some pretty awesome hardware. There's like a real exogeolander from ESA. It's one of the prototypes, but the real lander they're planning to send it to the moon to conduct some geological observations. We had 3D printers that were available to print anything that we wanted at that particular time. We had a radon exposure experiment, and we had a lot of plant-based experiments. This is a little bit about the organization. So the Space Generation Advisory Council is it addresses to UN. It's United Nations, and it has its insight is taken into account in different ways. So even if you're just a student or just a young professional, you have a reach to the UN, and you can basically give your input. So that's a pretty strong, association with it. The parent or the group that organized this mission is called Space Exploration Project Group. So they basically focus a lot on, human-rated exploration systems. The mission objectives for this particular mission were to understand the performance of astronauts who are doing the geological field work, understand the different technologies that can support the human activities on planetary surfaces. And there were experiments in human psychology and human factors-based experiments. And the interesting thing is they used Martian soil simulants for growing the plants that were in the HAB, so basically like space plants. When we sent out a call for um, two different PIs for experiments. We actually got a lot of pretty big response, but because the mission was limited in scope, because it was only 2 weeks long, and there were logistics issues that we have to take care of. Have to make sure that the PI, if he's in a different place, you gotta make sure that your experiment is sent on time, and so there were a lot of unforeseen issues that we had to address even before this mission started. But basically, we selected these experiments, and they were included in the final vision. We had the radon exposure measurement experiment. We had a live vest, which was basically a lot of sensors and tactile haptics to measure different aspects of human physiology. There was an exploration rover prototype from University of Mexico. Uh, Again, the Exogel lander from ESA. And we had a time perception, which was also run by ESA. It was basically they were testing uh, how subjecting us to certain frequency of lights is going to change our perception of time, like whether we can tell, if it's morning or night. So that's pretty interesting too. We had 3D printers available, and we also made sure to incorporate some emergency simulations in our, procedures. So this is the images of some of the experiments, the XGeo Lab lander, and there's the Smart Vest. That's also from the University of Mexico, and the Exploration rover was also from the University of Mexico. And it was interesting because some of these things actually resulted into a lot of positive work. But the measurements that were taken, it actually helped some of people complete their PhD thesis. So it was nice to know that you're actually contributing some of the data that goes into some real developments. This is their version of Moon and Mars yacht. Since this mission was conducted in Poland, we got access to a facility which is owned by the Polish Air Force, and it was one of the Air Force base, and they had these World War II bunkers plus hangars, aircraft hangars. So they converted one of those to like this dome-shaped thing, and they basically put a lot of soil and made it uneven surface to sort of simulate, the actual planetary conditions. They put a lot of emphasis on lighting in the working areas. They put some red lights to kind of give us a perception of Mars, and it was also important to not mess up the data for the time perception procedures that ESA was running. So also in the hab, there were like different lights with different frequencies. The mission support teams, they were divided into 4 different teams. We had a flight support, planning and scheduling. They did a lot of work. We call them overnight ninjas because they had to plan everything overnight before the crew actually wakes up the next day and start with the day-to-day activities. And the planning was done like every day. It changes with the status of experiments. So it was a lot of work that they had to do. The science team was available. They were in contact with PIs if some experiments have some problem running, so they were always available for us to give us a feedback and put us in contact with PIs indirectly. The media and outreach team did a lot of effort because it was a voluntary mission, so the funding was always a problem. So they had to. Again, this is the Mission Control Center. They converted one of these old buildings into mission control, and they had different people acting like, it was pretty similar to the actual mission control centers they have to support astronauts on ISS. This is the mission architecture, how basically the communication flew between different people. The good thing about this mission was we did not use paper at all. Everything was electronic, everything was online, and everything was like stored electronically. So there was no paper at all, and we basically had to like rely on electronic devices and then backups if something goes wrong. And also there was a communication delay and everything, so that sometimes made us pretty slow and kind of messed up our timelines. This is a generic view of what a mission control is, and they try to simulate it pretty well. So this is the crew, like the primary and the backup. And for the 2 week mission, the first week we tried to do a moon mission, and for the second week we tried to do the Mars mission with the time delay. It was basically to do a comparative study how results differ for different experiments. In the core crew. So even before the mission started, I was told it took more than a year just to prepare us to be able to go to Poland and actually do this thing. There's a lot of online training. We had specialists who were training us different, planetary geologies. The one training that I particularly enjoyed was voice communication training. There's a lot of protocols how you're supposed to say things and what needs to be said first versus what needs to be said second. Because even if you like just flip, the order of saying things, it can create a lot of communication between mission support and the actual astronaut crew. So that was a pretty interesting thing to learn. About 4 months before the actual mission happened, the core and the backup crew members, they flew to Poland. The Polish Air Force basically offered to give us some free training, and there was, emergency CPR training, there was skydiving, emergency egress training in the pool, and the picture in the middle bottom is basically they left us in a forest with blindfolds and we had to find our way back home. It was basically to simulate like if you're lost or stranded, how do you come back to your base? It's pretty interesting. This is the actual habitat. So on the left you see the bunker where they created that Mars yacht kind of thing, and the dome is like the actual habitat was sponsored by Space Garden. On the map you see it was in the town of Pila, okay, an old military base with some airfields and hangars. So I'm gonna go a little bit in the habitat and different modules they had. So the biology lab had hydroponics-based sort of space garden, and they were basically growing a lot of herbs and lettuces, which we actually were able to use in some of our meals. But we saw that when you use the simulants and when you use the hydroponic system, the rate of growth of this herb was for some reason like more than it actually takes to grow them in a normal soil. So we had them always available and we were able to use whenever we wanted. Also, it was like pretty nice area to hang out into. Kind of gives you connection to the earth, and it had a pretty soothing effect on your personality. In the operations, there was a lot of we basically conducted our AVA preps here. We made sure the communication with the astronauts who are out on the AVA and the people who are manning the HAB works fine and everything. The dormitory was it was nice, bunk bed kind of situation, but for some tall people it wasn't very nice. The kitchen, I'll touch base on the rations that were provided to us. but it was very communal, and I think that's the reason, like some of the activities that the crew was part of, it was all very uh, communal. So it actually made the crew very close to each other. We also transformed our kitchen into yoga studio sometimes. In the storage room, we had different station for different things, and the best part about this room was the electric generator bike, and it was mandatory for every crew to work out 15 minutes a day. Uh, so you can't skip it. It's not an option. The good thing was that when you work out, it actually powers one of the batteries, and that was used to uh, power the hab. So you're actually working out, and it's not going out like in rain. You're actually working out to keep your hab alive. So that was a nice touch to it. A lot of drinking water, which we would not really have a luxury to take to Mars, or but for this mission, we made an exception, I guess. In analytics lab, we had 3D printing and radical station. We made sure like we take samples of our blood and everything every day there. 3D printer came in handy a lot of times. A lot of things broke. Even some of the experiments that were sent by PI, sometimes some things were missing. So we actually were able to print out stuff and make it go and run. The atrium again, sort of like a living room of your house with a lot of communal activities there. We had family style dinners. We had movie nights there. We worked, played. It's nice. They actually so between the habitat and before you go to the Mars yard, there was an airlock, basically to simulate, if you just go out, the pressure usually is gonna go as well. So to keep the head pressurized, or at least to simulate that it remains pressurized, they had an airlock installed. They had different lights. The green light was basically it's safe to stay inside the head, and if the red light is on, it basically means like your airlock is breached and the depressurization is going on. So you basically have to seek shelter and or to fix the situation. 3D printers again provided us whatever we wanted whenever we wanted. We actually printed out some geology tools which we used during EVAs. For the radon detection, we had some measuring devices that were placed in different corners of the habitats as well as the area surrounding the habitats to see how the exposure varies. The Life Fest, whenever we conducted an EVA, one of the crew members always made sure to wear life vests. It was just to make sure we have different data points and a lot of data for the PI, and it actually worked pretty well. It was a nice addition to the experiments. For the rover, they were trying to see how the scoops work for a mining rover kind of prototype and how functional they are. And this prototype had a wheel, like all-terrain kind of eco-terrain wheel. So they were trying to see how functional it is going up and down different. The Exogeo lander, it had some places where you could put a sample and you can analyze the chemistry of that sample and basically relay the information remotely to the mission control center. It was pretty autonomous, but sometimes things broke and we have to, conduct an emergency EVA, basically to go out and fix it. The boards down there, the paper boards, we had electronic version of them, but it basically taught us how to recognize different set of frogs and understand how they vary and record them. So this was sent out to the PI almost immediately so that they can, verify the results with what they observed remotely. For the psychological studies, they had a very interesting technique called mindfulness. I know a lot of us are aware with yoga and you know and meditation, but mindfulness was a little bit different from all that, and it was pretty relaxing at times. We were able to use it even during our spare time in the house, or when things got tense, we were able to take 5 minutes off and use it and be ready to go get back to work. The person who actually was training us, he was a student from University of London, and this was a part of his psychology PhD degree thesis. And what I've learned from recently, the guy went on to train the real astronauts with ESA. So it's interesting to see how some of these things went on to make a real impact and have real applications. This is the outreach. A lot of work went into this to make us seen and heard. It was a global, platform, SGAC, because a lot of people come from different nationalities. They have national point of contacts in different countries, different continents. They did like a lot of competitions or the art competition for different age groups of students. So that's how we were able to reach about 3,000 of people. Also, during international astronautical congresses, a year before this mission actually happened, there were working groups where people actually sat down and outlined how this mission was going to be performed and what are the requirements and what were the objectives of this mission. So having a big team basically, designing this for you, and it kind of puts everything in perspective, like just to support 6 people, how many people actually, get behind you and work to make it happen. So that was pretty humbling realization. A little bit about mission life, scheduling. Overnight ninjas did a lot of work every night before the crew wakes up. Every column here represents one crew member. And this is EVA's troubleshooting again. 3D printer was really nice to have. We were able to fix whatever was broken. A lot of paperwork, not as in paperwork, but a lot of filing of reports after every procedure. Something goes wrong, if there's something emergency procedure that you have to conduct, you have to file a paperwork for that. You have to write a report for that. So all of this was done in our personal time, so sometimes it was pretty challenging and hectic. There's a lot of constraints on the usage of water. On the ISS, one person has 1.8 liters drinking water and about 2.3 liters sanitary water. We were given a little bit more, for that, because since we do not have a regeneration system, but every time we flush or every time we take a mini shower, which was usually a dry soap or dry shampoo, but you have to log it. It's the same thing. Every time you go to the bathroom, you have to log it. And the food on the left-hand side, that's what was provided to us from the Polish Air Force. It was a heat pack. You basically open everything, put a little water in the heat pack, put it back together, and it's gonna make everything ready to go. But it wasn't very pleasant to eat. We had one crew member who had, allergies. She could only have like vegan food. So that's another aspect. Like when you actually select crew, like how much emphasis are you gonna give? What are their limitations about food, or what are their preferences about food? Also, we made coffee. Because this is different exercises that we did. So the outcomes were like a lot of these studies contributed to the PhD thesis and master's thesis. So the data that was collected, it actually went into something, and that as a person who's collecting the data, it's a nice thing to know. Um, some of the things actually went from being a prototype to an actual product. For example, Medical West and Access Your Lab Vendor. So what went well? The mission was completed successfully. We collected a lot of data. The people like us who were basically students and had not a lot of experience, they got a valuable hands-on experience. The habitat was new at that time, so we were the first crew to test it. So we basically learned the shortcomings of the habitat and what was great in the habitat. We were able to provide recommendations to the habitat builders. What didn't go well, there were a lot of changes because it was a long mission, 1.5 years in the making, a lot of changes in the organization level and the leadership level, so it gets confusing sometimes. Everybody has different approaches, different leadership styles, so it was frustrating at sometimes. There were delays. The actual days of the missions were postponed so many times. The habitat location was changed last minute. Also, having an international team, it's a lot of it's a challenge because you're trying to motivate this big team and move them all together in one direction. Again, there was a lot of experience that came with being an international team, but because of the location and availability and time zones, there were a lot of problems. The funding was a big problem. We got some funding from different venues, but in the end, a lot of us paid from our own pocket. From the crew perspective, the lessons that we learned, the challenges, they can really bring a crew together because in the end, you're just 6 people isolated from everybody else, and whatever you do, you gotta stick together and work together to address the problem. Another problem that we face is like when you come out of that, zone, when you come out of that 2 week single mission, it's tough to come back to normal life because that all that excitement kind of goes away and you have to adjust and come to reality. All right, that's it. Thank you so much. Do you have any questions? I can take them.
We'll do a couple questions and then real quick because we're running out of time. But yeah, and then at the end we can all congregate outside of here, or if cross campus wants to kick us out. So.
Yeah, I must have missed it in the beginning. What was the duration of the simulation? 2 weeks.
The second week was Mars simulation, in which we actually exercised the time delay in all the communication and protocols.
When you were together for such a while with those team, how did you get along with them? Did you ever risk having any sort of conflicts? That sounds personal, but sometimes it can be very difficult to diffuse conflict.
For the first mission that I did with University of North Dakota, it was an all-female crew. We got along very well during the mission, but it was only 10 days and we had no liberty to go out, or there wasn't a lot of work, where you could bond with the crew. At the end of the mission, I remember I didn't want to spend any more time with them, and I just want to go back, on my own and just not see them for another few days. For the second mission, we actually had a lot of work to do, and we faced a lot of problems because there were tasks that we had to do. So we came together as a team. We worked together through the problems that brought the crew together. And also because it's an international crew, there's a lot of diversity culturally, language-wise. There was always something new to learn, and there was a lot of things to talk about. Does that answer your question?
Awesome, thank you. So the photographer wants to take a quick picture with all the cross campus and both the speakers, and right up here, we'll take a quick photo. And then we'll have our second speaker. Everyone's gonna be in the background, so if you guys want to turn around.
Here facing that way. Thank you. Everybody here facing that way. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so I need like 5, 6, 10 volunteers. If somebody can come here, it's a space, and be facing that way, that would be awesome if it's possible. If it's possible, 100%. Thank you. Yeah. Will you guys come for a second? Yeah. Let me check. Oh, thank you. It's super easy. Thank you guys. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you. You can stand. You can stand. Yeah, yeah. Stand. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Okay, now we have a lot of people. Okay, now everybody look at the camera for 60 seconds and smile everybody. Okay, thank you so much. Give me 1 sec. Stay there, keep going, keep going. Look at the camera and smile. Oh, there's one guy that looks very serious. That's okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you guys.
Thanks for that, the group picture.
Hey, thank you. You were the first one, so thank you.
Oh, no problem.
You were the first one.
So our second speaker, Jeffrey Stewart, will be speaking on. So he's speaking on sunrise.